Stay a while and listen. This is Brachio Bales coming to you from my sanctuary on the D2R Discord. On this episode, we sit down with a Blizzard artist to talk about world building, atmosphere, and what it takes to bring fantasy worlds to life. Welcome back to Stay a While and Listen, where we explore the world of Diablo 2 Resurrected, and in this special episode, the broader Blizzard universe. Today, we are joined by Jordan Powers, lead prop artist on World of Warcraft. While Jordan doesn't work on Diablo directly, he helps shape visual language of one of Blizzard's most iconic worlds. We'll be talking about art, atmosphere, and how great fantasy spaces are built. Jordan, thanks so much for joining us today. What's been keeping you busy lately?
First of all, can I just say thank you so much for having me. It's so cool to be here and talk with you guys. I really enjoy the podcast and absolutely love D2R, really one of my all-time favorites. As for what's been keeping me busy, we just launched a WoW expansion recently, Midnight. It has been soaking up, most of my free time in the evenings. With the launch of Midnight also came player housing, which has been very exciting for my team. Only gotten to play a bit of D2R lately, but very excited to jump in now that Warlock is out.
That was, the whole thing was just, we did an episode about it, but it's just like that the whole way that it was shadow dropped, just straight up amazing. Let's rewind a bit and talk about how you got here, because nobody just starts out making worlds on this scale. So I guess my first question is, how did you first get into digital art, and what eventually led you to Blizzard?
I've always really been into art, even as a kid. My parents literally have pictures of me like dual wielding crayons when I was little, and
Nice.
I would draw on everything that I could. I used to go to my grandmother's house and we would watch Bob Ross paint, and my grandma would let me use all of her expensive watercolors. We'd paint for hours. It was really great, and so I knew from like a young age that art was something that I really wanted to do. I love being creative. I also grew up on games too. Nintendo, Super Nintendo era, Game Boy, PC games too. I remember playing Doom 2 and Tides of Darkness, LAN parties, if you remember those. Warcraft 3, and I think Lord of Destruction came out within a year or so of each other. So, games and art, I think, were always kind of part of my DNA. So I went to school. I got an illustration degree. That led me to get a job at a technology camp where I got to teach kids digital arts courses and game design courses. It was pretty cool. Kind of like a summer camp where you learn how to make custom maps in a game engine. Like what I wish I had when I was a kid.
Yeah, for sure.
That's really where I kind of married together my love of art and my passion for games into something. So I went back to school. I got a 3D game art degree. That's where I met my mentor, Jeff Parrott. He was the one that really, he pushed me and encouraged me to follow my dreams. And during a senior portfolio class, he had passed along my name and my portfolio to a Blizzard recruiter without me knowing. So I got an email from a recruiter when I was still in class, and I was like, I was in disbelief. I wrote back and I was like, yeah, sure, I'd love to do an interview. Are you real? Is this real life?
I mean, yeah, that I can imagine, like out of the blue to have that opportunity is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I was not prepared for that. And yeah, they flew me out for an interview. I started, soon after graduating. That was in 2013. I was working the end of Mists of Pandaria and the beginning of Warlords of Draenor expansion as an associate artist on World of Warcraft. And now, 13 years later, still here. It's been a wild journey, but I wouldn't change it for anything. Absolutely love what I do, and I love my team.
And now you're here doing a podcast.
Yeah, with you guys. It's awesome.
Yeah, all roads lead to podcasting, I guess.
So what drew you specifically to working on World of Warcraft?
So I've been playing Warcraft, gosh, since Warcraft 2 Tides of Darkness, like way back in the day. I play Warcraft 3, perhaps for an unhealthy amount of time with my friends. And yeah, I've been playing WoW since 2004 when it launched. It came out right when I was in college. I just, I remember getting lost in the world, I guess is the best way to put it. It felt so, it felt big and dangerous, but exciting all at the same time. There was this huge, like, sense of adventure. And I made friends for life, like all over the world from playing World of Warcraft, which is kind of crazy to say out loud, but that sense of wonder, where you can kind of you think about all the stuff you can do with your friends. You can totally just get lost in this fantasy world. I loved it. I the amount of storytelling that they did with the environment, like, and the props, the characters, the music, it felt magical for me. I was hooked from the get-go. And I don't know, Warcraft has kind of just been, for me, it's been that thing that's always been in my life, from a very young age.
When you got there, were you given the opportunity to kind of choose your own way? And were you like, absolutely, I want to go on World of Warcraft, or was it more of a, we see you as a World of Warcraft kind of guy? Like, was it collaborative or targeted for you? That you were going to start, doing the work there.
Yeah, I'd say there was some intention going into it, like what sub team and discipline I would be working on. Definitely in the art team, definitely World of Warcraft. The World of Warcraft team is pretty specialized as far as most game teams are, because we're building like an entire world. So there's a team just for environment stuff, just for architecture, for characters, for props, which is what I do. So I kind of knew going in what I loved, what I wanted to do.
So for listeners, and this does include me as well, who might not be familiar with the term, what is prop art and why is it so important to building a believable world?
So prop art it's a very niche part of game art. On some game projects, it's lumped into environment art, but because of the world that we build in World of Warcraft is so expansive and detailed, there's a separate team dedicated to making, the small bits and bobs that you see in the game. What my team and I do, we put ourselves kind of like in the shoes of a culture, and we ask ourselves totally normal questions like, okay, if I were an orc or an elf, how would I go about building a table or a chair? What tools would I use? What would I eat? How would I sleep? And we design a series of props. We call them a culture kit to help ultimately fulfill that fantasy. We take a lot of pride in what we call ambient storytelling, which is basically telling a story without using words in all the little details, that you see when you enter a space in the game. So when you enter a room, you get a sense of, how these beings live, what they do, what's important to them, that sort of thing. Props are kind of meant to sit back a little bit. They don't really take center stage, as it were. The joke is if you don't really notice or zero in on a prop, it's probably doing its job well. It means it's making you feel grounded in the world, but also giving you some context clues at the same time, which is, obviously really important when you're doing world building in general.
Yeah.
So something like, let's say, a tavern would feel empty if it didn't have cups and plates and such, and that'd be kind of like what you guys do to story tell. Okay, that's awesome.
Exactly.
Like, I guess as the whole team, you're creating a new space. You're essentially going in there and looking at it and trying to imagine what would be the detail that go in, not just a room, right? Like,
yeah, in
a tavern, but you have to actually think about all the little details and add everything down to the smallest detail.
Exactly. It's the term besides ambient storytelling. I think the game term is like immersion,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You ultimately want people to feel like they are in the world. Like it's a lived in space.
Yeah.
It's not this like sterile, lifeless space. You want it to feel lived in. You want to make it feel like there's history, there's lore. It's a rich, vibrant world, and that's kind of where props come in.
I've never thought of it that way.
And there's a thing here, when you go from city to city or from zone to zone and you see the changes, very few places that I can recall, and I've been trying to for the last couple of minutes. I was trying to think of a place that I can look back and go, was this room or this area, did it not match with what it was supposed to? And I can tell you, I cannot think of one. When you go to a location and you go inside a building, you know where you are in that building. You know what zone you're in. You know the culture that lives there based on what you're seeing. I find it interesting with housing because housing connects so many disparate elements of the game because we're drawing from all the different expansions and the different areas. And, you'll pick up a piece of decor from a troll area, and then you'll pick up one from an ethereal area. And then when you get them into your area and your space and you start building them together, you start being like, well, that doesn't match. I can't have an orc table with undead chairs. I'm not a hobo. And let me tell you, my house is just barren. It is like it looks like the kind of place that squatters have taken. I'm surprised every time I go back in there that there's not graffiti on the walls. It's crazy.
That's one of the cool things about housing is you're giving agency to the player to make those world building decisions for their own space. It's pretty cool.
Some of the things I've seen are phenomenal.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So do you remember an early moment in games or otherwise where you noticed environmental details and thought, that's what I want to do?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Warcraft 3's custom map editor. If you all remember that, I don't know if you played that, but the War 3 custom map community was amazing, y'all. I spent like so much time making and decorating my custom maps. There was actually a limit to how many props. They call them doodads, by the way. That's a technical term that they used back in the day. We still use that today on the WoW team. There was a limit to how many doodads you could place on a map. And I hit the limit every single time. I was like, these things are so cool. And then, when World of Warcraft came out, I found myself obsessing over all the little details. There was, like we just mentioned, there's the food in taverns, there's books on shelves, alchemy tables. It just felt so incredible to me. I loved it. And but as far as like the moment that I knew, I was in a hand-painted op class in my 3D game art degree, and we were texturing, I think it was like a simple crate. And I remember looking at the clock and realizing that I had been painting tiny noodly details onto my crate for hours. I had completely, lost track of time. And that kind of like world building that you can do visually, it was so much fun to me. It was like this perfect blend of all the stuff that I loved, like art, storytelling. It felt very handcrafted, and that's when I knew that's what I wanted to do. Yeah.
Blizzard games are so iconic visually. I think that I could take just about any piece of Diablo or WoW art out of context in a photo, and no matter what it is, immediately know that's from World of Warcraft. That's from Diablo. I'll even fine tune it because I'm a nerd that way. If it's WoW stuff, I can almost guarantee you I could tell you which expansion it comes from. But from your perspective as an artist, what do you think helps define the quote-unquote Blizzard look, whether it's WoW or the games? Like, what do you think goes into making that a reality?
Man, that's a really great question. I think all Blizzard games do a really great job at creating like compelling, iconic, and just memorable visuals. Each game, I would say, has its own unique visual identity and things that help make that game feel cohesive for sure. But I think there are some common denominators that do bring them together. You look at Blizzard characters, for example, they tend to have really bold and striking designs and silhouettes and exaggerated proportions in a few areas. Like, what's a good example? Like Reinhardt from Overwatch.
Yeah, Reinhardt.
Reinhardt, you see these massive arms, the huge shoulders, the huge hammer. You look at someone like Illidan from Warcraft. He has those tattered wings, those massive horns, those glowing tattoos. That is distinctive shape language that defines that character. Even at a quick glance, you immediately know who you're looking at. So they're all very recognizable. They feel cohesive within their universe and have, those bold elements and shapes in their designs. But I would say color palette is a big part of it too. If you look at a lot of the Warcraft characters, and heck, even some of the Diablo characters, they operate within a limited range of colors that each help give them kind of their own unique identity. It's pretty cool. And, if looking beyond that, I think a lot of that echoes in the environment art that you see in our games as well. It feels illustrative, I guess is the right word. Like you can really tell that an artist had a hand in crafting it. I think that really speaks to the people on all of our art teams and how they honor our craft. There's just a ton of talented folks on all the art teams across Blizzard, and they're all really passionate about what they do. I think that really comes across in the art that we create for all of our games.
I do have to say, I find it funny that you bring up Reinhardt. I remember shortly after Overwatch dropped, there was a bunch of illegal clones of Overwatch being made, and I swear every single one that popped up in a video had a Reinhardt clone. Every single one of them. And it's just such an iconic look.
It is, yeah. It's once you have something striking and like iconic and recognizable like that, yeah, it's people latch onto it,
Now that we know how you found your way into Blizzard, let's talk about the work itself and what it takes to keep a world like Azeroth feeling alive year after year. So World of Warcraft has been around for 20 years. From an art standpoint, how do you keep a world feeling fresh while staying true to its identity?
Man, over 20 years. Assigning a number to it just hits differently. It's it's always just, man, it's just always been a part of my life. It's wild to think about. One of the core kind of like philosophical pillars we have on the WoW art team is honor the past, forge the future. I think that speaks to the legacy that Warcraft holds in the gaming community. There's decades of established visual identity that we, as artists, need to keep in mind when we make things, make them feel cohesive. But we also need to be forward thinking in how we're approaching making new things. I think that's vital for any established IP. Part of art is also about taking some sort of risk, trying new things, seeing how we can evolve and push and challenge ourselves. We owe it to ourselves to ask, how can we improve on X or Y, but also keep true to our style? Because we do take a very handcrafted approach to how we build Warcraft, and we want to keep doing that. So I think a big part of it is learning what's working well, understanding what players really resonate with visually, and kind of looking for ways that we can improve upon that with each new adventure, which we had to do a lot of that with Midnight recently.
Just wanted to say real quick, your answer, I guess my takeaway on that is like, you want to make sure that you honor the past, right? But you also need to take risks on new stuff. Otherwise, everything kind of just stays the same. You try to maintain continuity across everything so that there's always just kind of like a line that connects everything together. I think that's really cool.
You need some sort of like underlying visual connective tissue, I guess is the right term, to make it feel like it belongs in the world. But yeah, I mean, we have to constantly think of new ways that we can improve. We don't want to stagnate. You want to keep growing. You want to evolve as a team, as a game, and that's part of it too,
Working off that response, I have a question. I'll go off the board for 200, Jim. When you have to take an area like Zulaman, which is, mighty troll empire similar to Zandalar and Zul'Gurub and the others, and it's steeped in its own tradition and rituals that have been there for centuries. The Amani tribes have lived there for time immemorial, let's say. When we go to that zone, we're going there for the first time, so it's new to us. But it's not new to the Amani. So when you have a situation like that where you're not taking a zone fresh from scratch, like say Harandar, where when you go to Zulaman, there's maybe, I don't want to use the word restriction, but there's a framework there that says we need to be fresh, but at the same time we need to remember that Zulaman has been around for a long time. So it might be jarring to a player if Zulaman's architecture, let's say, is different from what we've seen before in other troll areas of the game that we've already experienced.
This is such a great question. I honestly, I could probably fill an entire podcast talking about like the art and the philosophy behind this stuff. But I think when you're all the things you have to take into account artistically when you update or revisit things, I think for me it's three main things. I think what is memorable and nostalgic for all of us, that's a big one. What's important about the fantasy experience from a player perspective, that's another one too. And I think the third one is looking for, harking back to the last question, looking for ways that we can plus it using some modern design tools, right? So if you look at, like Silvermoon City and Eversong Woods, both of those areas have a ton of nostalgia for like so many people. The original Silvermoon was mostly smoke and mirrors, a lot of things were just 2D alpha cards. And that's a big reason why you couldn't fly an old Silvermoon, because it would look like a movie set with all the fake painted walls and, limited camera angles that were engineered into it back then. That's just how it was built back in the day. But, nowadays, obviously with the world building that we do in Warcraft, we need it to be immersive. We need it to be expansive. So fully 3D. All the buildings had to be reimagined in 3D and, built up to modern fidelity. But we also look at what made those areas special. So colors, the shape language, the overall vibe. We really look at those core elements of what make those things really successful from an art perspective and from a player perspective. And we really try to expand upon it. We use those things kind of as like a North Star to guide our creative decision making as we go through updating the visuals. In the case of Zulaman, really building something that wasn't there before, building an expansive empire.
Yeah, and you absolutely crushed it. Silvermoon is I can't use enough hyperbole. It's a towering achievement. It was a jaw-dropping moment. It's amazing. It really is. I don't know.
Thanks, man.
There are not enough kudos I can think of to give the team on just how awesome it is, and it's just been phenomenal.
Oh, thanks, man. That means a lot.
I will say, I used to play World of Warcraft. I haven't played in quite some time, but I remember Silvermoon like originally. And then I did get a chance, Crude shared it with me, the new version of it, or however you want to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And it does look phenomenal.
Thanks, man.
I kind of wish I had a chance to experience it that way back then, but it's awesome that it's available to people now. I just imagine like a cardboard box kind of city, right? Where you like the fascia and you go on the backside of it and there's nothing there. Like how that could have worked.
So if you ever fly in and out of Orgrimmar on a Wind Rider, there are bridges that go over the river next to Orgrimmar, and you'll watch it, and the top of the bridge kind of has like a conal structure that comes up, and when you're as you're turning, as the camera turns, you can see it where it's only like you only kind of see it halfway. It's exactly what Jordan was talking about, the 2D kind of thing. So depending on the angle that you look at it, you'll kind of lose half of it, and you'll see that it's only showing full in this one direction, and it kind of splits the other way.
I know what you're talking about. It literally just doesn't render properly.
Yeah, it doesn't render on the other side, and I got to tell you, I never gave Blizzard a demerit for that. I was like, it was still so awesome to play. Who cares? Like, who's gonna nitpick about that? You know? But
yeah, the aspect of skywriting has definitely changed how we build things too. Because you can basically go anywhere, fly anywhere, almost anywhere. So we can't
cut corners,
you can't fall back on that old game design or game art trick back in the day, as we once did. It's got to be Got to be 3D now.
And I guess you mentioned that old trick. I've seen screenshots from, I don't know how they do it, but basically they zoom out on the camera angle somehow in Diablo 2, and you can see like literally where it's just black space. Like they only designed so far, and they only designed what was absolutely necessary to like show for the player. And if you zoom the camera out even just a little bit, it's just there's nothing, right? And it's not something you really think of because like you only ever see that one camera angle, and it does feel so immersive, but you can't cut corners like that in a world where people can just go everywhere.
Yeah.
Did you play D2 like recently, like let's say prior to D2R, but like much later in the cycle, like say in the 2010s or 2020? So if you play that on a modern computer, you needed to use a couple of add-ons to make it work correctly, like a glide wrap, and you can see that in the larger monitors. You'll see, as sometimes when you're going, you'll see the game rendering as you go, and like you'll see on the sides of the screen, you'll see like the like little like chopping block kind of thing where on the edges of the screen, because it's doing it on the fly as you're going.
Yeah, the tile sets pop in because
exactly. Yeah,
it's not meant to work at certain resolutions. It wasn't really designed. The old one wasn't designed to do that, because that was that era of games. It had a certain set of aspect ratios and resolutions that it was working for. Yeah, absolutely.
So then, has there been any particular zone or expansion that felt especially challenging and rewarding for you from an art perspective?
Oh, so many. So many for me personally. I think each zone and expansion has its own set of, unique challenges, as it were. Is it all right if I choose a zone and an expansion for my answer? Is that allowed?
You can do whatever you want.
Okay. I don't want to be rude. It's your podcast.
No. This is your time. Like, okay. We're just here to listen too.
Right, and feel free to take all the time to explain why for each of them too. Like we love getting gritty with stuff.
For the zone, for me it was probably Suramar in Legion. I spent almost a year working on that one, and it had a ton of challenges. It was just started later in production. There were a ton of technical hurdles that we had to overcome. The whole city was kind of built like a bowl, meaning when you stood from almost any point in the city, you could see a huge section of the city. So, we were just talking about this. The video card would have to draw all of it on screen. There wasn't anything occluding from your camera from drawing the rest of the city. So it was tough. And on top of that, there were two other huge architectural elements that were visible from far away. You had the floating city of Dalaran, and you had the Tomb of Sargeras raid, all visible from the city. And it looked epic, but it was a performance nightmare for a lot of the machines that our players had. So I remember sitting in so many meetings with people being like, these machine specs that players use, the frame rate just drops. It's like they're playing a slideshow. I would go in and I'd reduce try counts on all the props everywhere to get it to run. I had to hand make LOD models. That's level of detail models, by the way, for those curious.
Everyone that's listening that plays D2R, we're thinking LOD as in the expansion.
Yeah,
that was my first thought as well.
That's why I wanted to clarify.
That's immediately where I went, but I appreciate you defining that.
It's like these game terms. I want to be clear. Yeah, level of detail models. So when you're far away, a lower triangle count model and a lower resolution texture on that model pops in to make it a little bit more performant for machines and easier for the video card to draw them on screen, right? So we have an automated system that helps with that, but I had to do a lot of those by hand to get them to be visible from far away and still performant. And it was very tedious, but all that being said, I think it turned out great. Suramar, I think, is still one of the best cities we've made. It still looks incredible, in my opinion. For The expansion, I'd say Midnight really challenged us in a lot of different ways. I think we had to really rethink how we approach prop art in general, because like I mentioned before, I think I mentioned this before, most props kind of take a back seat visually and provide some sense of ambiance. But housing really changed all that. In the past, we do some things for props to make them more performant and easier for the game. If there's a prop that goes into the ground, we cut off some of the bottom geometry on the 3D model where it goes into the ground, because you're never really going to see those things on a 3D model. So it saves a few triangles here and there, but the savings add up over time. But with housing, you can rotate things upside down, you can scale them up, you can scale them down, place things any which way you want. So we had to fundamentally change how we approach making props. And on top of that, some things are tintable, you can customize the color. It was a lot. It all required us to sort of approach prop art from a different perspective, because people were just straight up interacting with our art in a different way than before. Something like a basket or a simple prop like that. In the past, we'd just be like, yep, that's a basket. But now we have to consider how it's going to be used in housing. What if someone scales this up? What if are they going to put stuff inside of it? Things like that. So I will say, like, for all of its challenges, though, I do think it also turned out awesome. I think, we were talking about this earlier. People have made some insanely creative things with housing. And, when you give agency to the players, you get epic things, and that's kind of exactly what we've been seeing.
And I imagine folks are doing things that you never even considered.
Oh yeah.
Like when you give that much reign to people, not only will they do things that you didn't expect, but they'll find ways to break things, I guess. Right. So,
yeah.
And so, like, when you are designing stuff for this, you do some kind of testing to see if you can break things. Can you recall any time when, like, you ended up having to change something after the fact because it was being exploited?
For housing, not so much exploits. I think it's more visual stuff that would be breaking. Like the bottom caps on geometry, like I said, people could rotate certain things, and then when you turn things upside down, it's like, wait, where's the geometry? It's invisible. Where did it go? I can't see it. And then we'd have to come in and like cap off bottom geometry. We'd have to, take into account if things get scaled up, how's the texture resolution going to hold up? We ask ourselves questions like that all the time, because you just ultimately don't know how people are going to use things. That's part of the fun and creativity of housing.
Yeah.
So it kind of required us, like I said, to look at things in a different light than we normally do. Nothing so far at the time of this recording, knock on wood, nothing game breaking or exploitable.
That's a good thing. So we kind of touched on this a little earlier, but how does prop art specifically support the player experience, specifically when you're going from, let's say, zone to zone or expansion to expansion?
Oh man, I feel like I could also talk your ear off about this one. That notion of ambient storytelling that I mentioned earlier, kind of like telling a story without using words, that really helps us approach kind of the overarching story of an entire expansion from a different angle. So you'll get a view of, what's going on from an NPC in like quest text or a voiceover or a cutscene, but there's also the smaller scale storytelling that happens when you look at the environment. That's really kind of like where the power of props comes into play. So since we mentioned it recently, Silvermoon City and Midnight, we have the Blood Elves. They're heavy magic users. They're sophisticated. They're elegant. They're perhaps a little bit snobbish. They'd rather enchant a broom to magically sweep their house than do it themselves, right? That's they've got better things to do,
Yep.
Side note, we do actually have a self-sweeping magical broom in the game. There's also there's magical floating bottles that pour glasses. There's self-swinging magical hammers. There's floating books that have pages that turn themselves. The list goes on and on. But really seeing how these cultures live their daily lives, the things they make, how they eat and sleep, that's that's where prop art comes in. That's immersion, right?
Yeah.
That helps ground the player in the stakes of every single zone. So if you look at D2R, for example, you look at the fire pit in Act 1 in the Rogue encampment, there's bowls, there's plates, there's mugs, there's cooking implements around the campfire, you know? Did the townsfolk use them? Did other adventurers use them? They look dingy. Are they running low on supplies? It's things like that that help you get your imagination into high gear as you're going into these spaces.
Yeah, it's like the mundane details that make a space feel lived in.
Yeah,
essentially.
exactly.
You're dressing it up in a way that makes it feel like it just sets the tone for the area that you're in. That's
the
really
day-to-day minutia.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So I imagine it's tricky. You're not just updating textures. You're essentially, when you're working on World of Warcraft, especially like classic, whatever, you're updating memories.
Absolutely.
So even though every Blizzard world has its own identity, there's still a shared creative philosophy behind them. So let's zoom out a little bit and talk about that shared DNA.
So Diablo 2 Resurrected has always had a very strong sense of atmosphere, and many of the World of Warcraft zones are equally memorable. So from an artistic perspective, what goes into creating such a strong sense of atmosphere in Warcraft?
Man, D2R's atmosphere is like, that's the kind of stuff that stays with you, you know? Same for WoW, I would say. I think some of those starting zones will just forever be in my brain, be a part of me. I think atmosphere it's one of those things that's equal parts art, also equal parts vibe, or how it makes you feel, like sort of what emotions it can evoke. I think atmosphere specifically it goes beyond game mechanics or what buttons you're pressing. I think atmosphere is one of those things that when it really works, it's because all of the parts are complementing the other parts, right? I think to do that, it's really important for all of us on the team to be aligned in what we're collectively building, right? From a narrative sense, from an artistic sense. I think that making something that is visually compelling is oftentimes much easier than making something that is visually compelling and a cohesive package. I think that's where you get a strong sense of atmosphere in any game, right? It's like a perfectly balanced culinary delight, you know, a perfectly made meal. All the flavors are there and working together in unison.
So when building an environment in WoW, how do different disciplines like environment, lighting, and sound collaborate to support the overall mood of a zone?
There's that old phrase, teamwork makes the dream work, and I think that perfectly kind of encapsulates just how involved it is that when we make a zone for WoW, there's so many moving parts and disciplines that go into making it a reality. I think it really starts with a rough set of ideas, what we want to explore narratively, and then from the art side of things, we typically start with what's called a postcard image that our amazing Viz Dev team whips up. So for those unaware, like a postcard image, we call it that because, you know, if you were to theoretically travel there, you wanted to buy a postcard, send it home to mom and dad, it would have some picturesque vista that captures the look and feel of it, right? That's where we dig in first. Kind of like all the other world art teams start collaborating and making the building blocks together. So environment art is a huge part of it. That's things like terrain tile sets, zone lighting, shadows, fog, all those things have like intensity and color knobs you can turn to fiddle with. And on top of that, there's prop art, there's architecture. That's kind of where we start marrying together shape language, common materials, unified color palettes. You know, working on this is really a close partnership with all the world art teams. We're constantly communicating, tweaking the art that's being made to fit with ultimately what our friends and other teams are creating. But it's not just about the art either. I think sound is also equally big and important part of atmosphere. Matt Ullman helped compose the Diablo 2 soundtrack, and you know, like those things just live rent free in my brain. All those songs, like
Yeah,
I can
sure.
close my eyes and I can just hear the music when you roll out into the Bloodmoor and you know, on a new character in Act 1. It's incredibly powerful stuff. But
what is that track
the
called?
sound
Is it
team,
Wilderness?
I think it's called Wilderness. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, but yeah, sound is just so hugely important. And powerful. I think that's one very, very important part of atmosphere. And when we're working on a new zone, or a prop sometimes too, the sound team will come in and be like asking folks, all right, what's the vibe of the space you're building? What's the story we're trying to tell here? And they'll work their magic. It never ceases to amaze me.
We talked a little bit just recently about the atmosphere. When Diablo 2 had been a while in the tooth and Diablo 3 was announced and then it came out, a lot of Diablo players criticized Diablo 3's color palette. And one of the things they said was, it's too bright, it's too World of Warcrafty. And when you mentioned atmosphere, it got me to thinking about my first initial experience in Tirisfal Glades. So Tirisfal Glades is the starting area for the undead. When I started, I played an alliance character up to maybe level 8 or 9. I don't remember how long. And then I just decided to roll the mage that I still play to this day, an undead mage. I have never forgotten, and it's never gotten away from me, the feeling and the emotion that I felt going through Tirisfal that very first time and experiencing that zone. When you start in there, you start as you've just woken up undead.
Right.
From the starting area to the first little town that you go to called Brill, there's this long walk through a desolate forest landscape, and the trees are dead, the grass is dead, there are demon dogs running around, and everything is quiet and eerie. The atmosphere is this kind of heavy, there's just, it's so powerful and overwhelming. And I always thought to myself, if people who criticize Diablo 3 would have experienced Tirisfal Glades, they would never have went, it's too Warcrafty. Because they would have known that Warcraft had its own darkness in it, and I'm not even talking about Darkshire because I wasn't an Alliance player long enough to experience that, and from everything I've been told, Darkshire is just one of the creepiest places in the game.
Equally creepy. Yeah, I think it's really cool that you mentioned Tirisfal. That place, the atmosphere, since we were just talking about that, it is palpable. Like, it is eerie, like you said. There is just a hint of dread that you get walking along those paths with the fog, with the very solemn, just slightly unsettling music playing in the background, somewhat serene, but still keeping you on your toes. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's nothing like that. That's the kind of stuff that stays with you when you think atmosphere.
It really does. And when I replayed on Classic, it's just so much. It's just incredible. It really is. It really just harkens back, and it just takes you to that moment and that feeling. So how closely do artists work with the narrative or quest designers when you're shaping a space? And how early in the process does the storytelling influence the visual direction?
For WoW, like every step of the way. And it's crazy awesome. Narrative and quest folks will work very closely with art folks from the get-go, and we'll brainstorm ideas all the way from major visual themes for the zone, all the way down to the smaller local stories that we want to tell. It's highly collaborative. That's a big reason why for me it's so creatively fulfilling, and probably for so many other people. But I think I mentioned this earlier. Like, one of the things Chris Metzen says when we have meetings with him is, the idea that everything is storytelling, not just how we write quest text, but how the story notes and themes kind of affect everything. So, what are the emotions that we're trying to evoke? What are the themes we want to explore? What notions do we want to challenge? How do we convey wonder and a sense of adventure? Or, like we were just talking about, Crude, feeling of fear or despair, stuff like that. All those things help inform the artist working on it, how to approach building a space, from our color choices, and all the hand-painted textures that we get to make, down to how we light a space or the fog that we use. It's all storytelling. And I will say this, and working closely with quest designers also helps prevent what we like to call art crimes from happening. So oftentimes they'll have this cool idea of what they want to do. They'll, blow up a barrel as part of a quest. They might spawn something in that was made in 2004 that, the game's been out for a really long time. They might use a very, very old asset. And that's where we get to collaborate with them and be like, hey, That one's kind of crusty looking. Like I can count the pixels on that texture on that barrel that you're blowing up. Like here's the new one I just made. Why don't we try that one instead?
All right. I think we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we will continue our conversation with Jordan. This episode is brought to you by our D2R Discord and subreddit. Come join our community of over 100,000 combined members. Ask questions, interact with other players, get real-time updates on Diablo Clone and Terror Zones, join voice channels and kill hordes together, enter our giveaways, or just hang out and chat. If you love D2R as much as we do, be sure to check it out. Links in the description. And we're back. So we've talked a lot about process and collaboration. Now we want to shift gears and talk about things from your personal perspective as an artist.
So from your perspective, Jordan, as an artist, what makes a fantasy environment visually compelling, regardless of the game that it's in?
I think for me personally, fantasy worlds that are super compelling and kind of stand the test of time really demonstrate a command of color, light, and kind of just emotions across a spectrum. How things make you feel, I think that's really important and really special in a fantasy game. If it has range like that, it's gonna hook me, and it's gonna keep me hooked. I know it. If a fantasy game can kind of introduce multiple environments or biomes and have each one feel distinctive enough artistically, with some of that underlying visual connective tissue that I mentioned earlier, that's like a real sign of mastery of craft. It goes beyond just what you're seeing. It kind of becomes more of an experience, That's the kind of stuff that really sticks with you, because I think it doesn't just leave a taste in your mouth. You remember all that it made you feel, as a player, as a viewer, as a fan, all the above. I think that's really what makes fantasy game environments compelling for me.
So do you have a favorite Diablo 2 setting artistically? Something that really stuck with you visually? And what about it stands out?
Oh man, that's so hard. I have so many favorites. I will say I really like Loot Lane. I like a lot of the settings in Act 1. The one that really stands out for me is Harrogath, Act 5. It's just so insanely cool to me. Like city under siege vibe, all of that, sort of a, like a calm oasis amongst all the chaos surrounding it.
You step right outside the gate and there's war. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like that it's exactly. There's like a juxtaposition between like it feels calm in the city, even though it maybe isn't. But you go through that gate and there's siege weapons, right? Like it's pretty cool.
You get that sense of dread, or just like lingering dread, just from how you're going around and interacting and looking at all the art in the town too. I think I was going to say the remastered Harrogath in D2R looks absolutely incredible. And as a prop artist, this is me nerding out for a minute here, but they added there's so many juicy details, you guys. There's sacks of grain with apples, there's crates, there's weapon racks, the tents. The tents have tables with things on them. They did an absolutely amazing job at not only just up-resing it, and keeping the same vibe, but also expanding on it, which I think is really difficult to do. And there's so much storytelling in there that there wasn't before.
Yeah.
Also, why it stands out is because I spent a lot of time in there now doing bail runs nowadays. But also doing back in the day, you guys remember Bloody Foothill and Pindle runs?
Yeah.
Yep.
And the music is so good on the Harrogath track when the horns come in. Oh, it hits differently. It makes you feel like something epic is about to happen. Yeah, I mean, just so many good memories hearing that music and being in Harrogath for me. That's what it's got to be.
Do you flex along with Larzik?
Do I flex along with Larsic? He does do a fair bit of flexing, doesn't he?
He is very proud of his muscles, man. I love it. Is there a Diablo 2 boss you've always loved visually, and do you think it would be fun to see interpreted in a WoW art style?
Oh man, so the easy answer here, I think, is going to be the Butcher, even though I know he's not technically a boss. And we did do a nod to him in the Highmaul raid as one of the bosses there, but I think he was just he was like an ogre, not really like a demonic berserker type of character. But if we're talking bosses though, honestly for me, Bale would be so sick to see in a Warcraft art style. I think his design is just, it's kind of bonkers if you think about it. It's like a quadruped with crazy horns. You got tentacle spikes. There's, that creepy face only a mother could love. It sounds so insane. I would love to see how that would be translated. Even though I know our character art team and rigging team might not be as enthusiastic about all that as I am. I'm sure there's some challenges doing that and making it move, but that would be really cool in my opinion.
You know what I just saw recently, and I don't know how true this is, but apparently Bale's face is actually not his face. He's wearing the face of somebody else that's like just stretched across his face.
That's so metal.
Yeah,
I love it.
I don't know how true that is, but I think I saw it on our Reddit. Someone had posted some details about it, and they had a screenshot. If they hadn't said that, I wouldn't have thought about it. But after I read that and I saw the picture, I was like, oh man, that could be true. I don't know. They kind of dug into the lore a little bit about it. I'll see if I can find it and maybe put it in the description of the video. I'll put a link to the Reddit post.
That's wild.
But I never even thought about that and didn't know that was part of the lore.
What if it's Marius's face?
No, I think it was one of the guys from.
I just threw it into Google for you. He's not wearing a mask. He is possessing the body of Tal Rasha, and the human face on his head is Tal Rasha's actual skin stretched over his demonic visage.
There you go.
That's crazy.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay.
That is wild.
That is wild.
And what's even more wild is that, like 20 years later, we're still learning stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's so
like
cool.
the lore is
It's
so good.
Deep.
Yeah. Let's get a little more into the craft itself.
At a high level, with that, what kinds of tools or workflows are important for modern game art in today's world?
So I get asked this question quite frequently from mostly newer artists looking to get into the game industry and game art too. I would argue that it's not really about the tools you're using. I think the core art fundamentals are vital to anything that you do. Things like light, color, perspective, form, composition, anatomy, if you're into characters, all those skills, I think, are going to be what will translate into whatever tools you use. That way, whatever, software or tool you ultimately use, whatever 3D software you use or texturing tool you use, whether it's, like Substance or 3D Coat, Maya, 3D Studio Max, Blender, whatever it is. I think ultimately those things are just tools in your theoretical Batman utility belt of art tools. You understand kind of how to achieve a certain look, and you have options for how to do that. Because in art, there is no direct path from point A to point B, right? There's tons of different ways for you to get there. And I think what matters is the end result. If you master those fundamentals, the rest of the pieces are going to fall into place. That's why, for my team, no one's forcing anyone to use a specific 3D package to model or UV something. It all really comes down to what is more comfortable for the artist to use. Like I said, there's no direct path from A to B, right? So the end result is really what matters most, I think.
That's fair. You did mention UV. What is that?
So everything in a 3D model that's textured is wrapped with a flat 2D texture. It's like unwrapping a Christmas present, you know? If you laid it out, you can see like, oh, this is on the right side, this is on the left side, this is the top, this is the bottom, this is, you know, we have to unwrap things. In UV just stands for the horizontal and vertical orientation for the 2D plane. So anything that's in 3D has a flat 2D texture. You might see them sometimes when you check out like when people go data mining and stuff and look at the texture files in a game. You'll see the really creepy flattened character faces that look, we were just talking about like stretched faces on Veil. It looks like that. It looks really creepy, but it's meant to wrap over a three-dimensional object.
Okay.
I was going to ask you about that.
Go ahead, Creed.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to, what you just talked about, I was going to ask you about that. Like, what was I've seen that before. I've seen it in some of the, when they display like the art contest winners, they'll have that little box and it has like the stretched out faces and it looks like all the little assets in a box. And I was curious about it. Yeah. So thanks.
That's the texture. Yeah.
I think I've seen them before. My wife's a big Sims player, and some of like, they have like mod menus and stuff, and some of like the clothing and stuff, they actually have that stretched out look to it. So kind of cool to be able to see that and now know that that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, it's like meant to wrap around a 3D model in a very specific way. And you know, since it goes every which way the 3D model does, the texture usually has to match it. So that's why you get the weird stretched face look when you look at a character texture usually, or the UVs.
How has advancing technology influenced the way artists approach world building?
I think when you work with a game engine that's perhaps a bit on the older side, like WoW, any sort of advancement or new tech, it's like, man, this is incredible. Especially when you compare it to how things were made, like for vanilla WoW back in the day. I remember like one of my old bosses telling us a story. He was like, yeah, back then we were working on Dun Moreau, and this guy spent days trying to sculpt this winding path of, you know, terrain up to Ironforge. And our tools just couldn't handle it. Somehow he did it. We were in awe. And, you know, you look at it, it was literally like a ramp up a mountain. But like, obviously now our terrain tools are much more advanced. We can do more crazy things with terrain topology. Our LOD system is much more sophisticated. Again, that's not Lord of Destruction. That's level of detail.
I appreciate you clarifying.
Yeah. No worries. We can do more with geometry and textures than in the past. So, you know, the same is true for like lighting and zone fog, all that stuff. One of the things that used to be a huge time sink for character artists was helm fitting, or literally manually adjusting the 3D object of every helm in the game to go on every body type and race for playable races. It was, as you can imagine, it was a little tedious, but you know, now with the help of some machine learning, it takes only a few minutes and it allows our artists to spend more time making, you know, more awesome mounts, more weapons, more armor for players to enjoy. It's a really good use of tech, in my opinion, because it supports the artists making the art. It doesn't circumvent them. And we take a very handcrafted approach to how we build World of Warcraft. And I think that's, you know, it's very important to us, not just the art and world building, you know, but I think how we approach kind of like making the game in general.
Yeah. And like, it's not something you really think about generally, but like with the older tools, like when you design a helmet, it's the proportions are going to be different. Like it's going to look differently on a Tauren versus, you know, say a troll, right? So, I guess that's not something I ever really considered.
And then you factor in like in modern WoW, we've got allied races, right? There's tons more playable races than there were before. every time we add a new one, if we didn't have that tech, it would just be this cumulative cost every single helm that we add to the game, Now that we have it, like I said, we get to actually get some time back and use it to make other cool things. It's pretty great.
Is there a common misconception that players have about how game art is made?
I think there are definitely some misconceptions about game art in general, or just how games are made broadly. There's that one sort of like misconception, I think, that it only requires good software or tools, perhaps little artistic skill, which I don't think is true. Obviously, art is intrinsically like highly collaborative. It's just a collaborative process in general, and it requires input from multiple places, multiple people for it to be refined. Art isn't really made in minutes either. It can take time to go from an idea into something that is actually usable and looks good. There is no magical make art button to make things game ready. It takes the hand of a skilled artist, and it takes feedback from different people to mold it into something that's ready for the game engine to handle. And it sometimes it doesn't matter how beautiful something is. If it won't work in the game engine, people can't see it and they can't enjoy it. So performance is also very important too.
At your level, how do you balance the hands-on art and art making process with mentorship and direction with your team?
Man, great question. I think the more senior you become on any team, the more experience you get. When you start stepping into like a leadership position, it's less about what you are creating, and it's more about the body of work that your team creates, right? It's more about their success and how you can support and challenge them. And that's something that I really take seriously, like properly challenging people, helping set them up for, the slam dunk, as it were. That's really important to me as a leader. Mentorship is definitely a part of that. I think in the mentorship space, I've been lucky enough to work with like a lot of amazing people, and I'm really proud. I'm going to gush for a moment. Many of the artists that I've mentored over the years have found a job at Blizzard. Many of whom I get to work alongside now. So it's rewarding. It's insanely gratifying to just not only see people thrive, but like I get to work alongside them. It's so great. But as far as like being hands-on, I obviously don't prioritize making that art as much as I do my team and making sure everyone's happy and healthy. So, but occasionally I do get to do some art, and it's great. I do like to lead by example where I can. I think for me, it's important to show people on your team that you're still able to get down and do the stuff that they do. Share what you're doing with your own team. To borrow like the pirate ship analogy, I try to be the captain who can, tie the knots, hoist the sails, steer the ship, all that stuff as much as I can. I try to do that because I think it's really important to do.
I agree. When I managed a company here in Las Vegas, one of the things that I always made sure of was that, I did all the stuff that we did, and I didn't just, kind of like sit back and not do that. I wanted, to always like keep in touch with that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, like leadership, your people want to know that you're able to do the stuff that you're asking from them.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of you have ever had bosses that would be like, I would never ask you to do anything that I couldn't do myself, or something to that effect. And to some degree, I think that's true. Like, especially I would imagine in the artistic world, that might be even more true.
Yeah. I mean, like taking it way back, I'm an Eagle Scout. Back in Boy Scouts, I tried to do the exact same thing. I tried to, when you ask people to do something, when you're like a patrol leader or a senior patrol leader, it's important to lead by example in certain cases, to show that you do know what you're talking about. You can do the stuff that they can. And I think it builds trust, and I think it builds camaraderie too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that ability to get into the trenches with your guys makes the very difference between being a boss versus a leader. When you're not just someone that's barking those orders or like make this happen, to actually get down there with the guys, be like, let's try this. I've had the same issue. Let's go this route, and I think that's really cool that that's how you face your team. That it's not I'm in charge. It's more of what can we do to make this work, and that's just a sign of a great leader there.
Oh, thanks, man.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things like from my life that I always try to remember is there's a saying. I think it goes something like, "If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together." And I think that kind of the way that you were describing things really kind of reminded me of that a lot.
Yeah, I like that notion. That's cool.
Yeah, I think I want to say it's an old African proverb. I could be wrong, but I know I read it somewhere and it always just stuck with me. And I try to remember that in like the work that I do. So behind all the tools and techniques, there's a human side to this work, and I want to touch on that for just a moment. How do you stay creatively inspired after years of working in the same universe?
I think part of it is just the fact that Warcraft has just always been a part of my life in one way or another. Like from the RTS to WoW, it's just that fantasy world that I've grown to love. It might sound super corny. I don't mean it to sound corny, but I just love the fantasy. Many of us on my team play and enjoy the game in our own free time. So having a passion, I guess, and appreciation for the game is really what helps keep you grounded, I think. The other part, I think we have an insanely talented group of people at Blizzard and on the World of Warcraft team in general. With that many talented folks, if you're a creative-minded person, being around that in itself is just constantly inspiring. I think it keeps you growing your own skills, especially when you see stuff that other people are doing. The culture is one of knowledge sharing. So whatever you're working on, whether it's like hand painting a wooden texture for a crate, modeling fur on a creature, chances are there are some experts on that on the team, and they will give you a whole demo on how to do it. Which is great. We have regular knowledge shares and mini demonstrations on the prop art team, and I think it's great. Other teams do that as well, and it really helps people grow. The culture, the atmosphere, and the people that are a part of it, I think, are also what really help keep this like fresh and rewarding for me too.
Who are some of your biggest artistic influences, inside or outside Blizzard?
Oh man, too many to list. I think. Let's see. I play a ton of Magic the Gathering, and there are a ton of artists that I admire in that space. Let's see. Richard Kane Ferguson, Mark Tadine, Rebecca Gay, John Avon, Jesper Eising, Niels Ham, Kev Walker, Mark Poole. I could probably fill also an entire podcast talking about artists that I find inspiring. As far as like traditional artists outside the TCG space, like obviously illustrators from like the golden age of illustration, maybe more familiar with the folks listening, Ed Hopper, N.C. Wyeth, Maxfield Parrish, Lion Decker. Yeah, the list goes on and on. Real masters of their craft. As far as like people that have worked at Blizzard over the years that I've been lucky to work with, Eric Braddock is a friend of mine. He's done a lot of work on WoW and Hearthstone. Really amazing illustrator. Wei Wang is a legend. Glenn Rain, Jimmy Lowe, they're the goats, you know? I mean, whenever I see concepts or paintings from them, it's like it takes my breath away. Like absolutely world-class artists.
So what part of the creative process do you and your team get the most excited about?
Oh, I know I can speak for my team on this one. I think texturing, putting some of that art in game art, like because World of Warcraft has a stylized hand-painted like art style. And when I say hand-painted, I mean just that, by the way. Like every wood grain, every wood texture, every bit of moss on a rock, every metal rivet has been painted hand painted by an artist. So like you can literally see some painterly brushstrokes in certain textures. Really gives you that kind of like illustrative feel that I mentioned earlier when you get to experience the game. I think that phase of our creative process, when you take something that has like a temporary texture on it, maybe like a flat color, and you start painting it and bringing it to life, that is very special to us art folks. You get to breathe life into something, and you get to do a little bit of world building too. There's really nothing else like it. We absolutely love that part of the process, and I think it's even more gratifying when you get to see things that other teams are doing, and you start to see things solidifying in the game engine that we use internally to test things. You slowly start to see the big picture take shape, right? Kind of like right in front of your eyes. And I think there's something really magical and creatively fulfilling about that part of the process for sure.
I want to share with you, when it comes to, let's say, the forest biomes or anything, let's say Sylvan, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more of a Grizzly Hills, Azure Peak, Silver Pine fan, as opposed
a man
to
after my own heart.
Yeah, as opposed to say like Ardenweald, Harrendar kind of thing. But Amir Drasil, wow. When that zone
Yeah.
first launched and I went into that zone, I was absolutely stunned with the beauty of it. The curving of the leaves, the way they flow in and out. There's a almost magical quality to it that made the Emerald Dream come alive before your eyes. I know I'm being very flowery and full of hyperbole, but it really was. I remember talking about it in my guild when we first started playing in that zone. I was like, I can't believe how good this looks. It's incredible. It's just because that type of thing, like I'm not a huge fan of like the flowery mushroom type things. I mean, they're fine. That's not my biggest thing, but that particular zone captured what you were just saying about, like getting that in there. And that's what I think of when I think of the painterly and the artistic styling. Amir Drasil was just amazing to me.
Yeah. And I remember I mentioned this earlier, like there's experts on the team that are really good at certain things. I remember I was working on Borealis, and there was someone on the team who was really amazing at painting wood textures. And there's a lot of wood in Borealis and in Kultir and society in general. And he did a quick demo for me on how he approached his wood painting. And like I looked at the end result, and yeah, you can feel and see the brushstrokes and the gestures that he was making when painting that stuff. When you see it in context in the game, when you see what other teams are doing to help fulfill that fantasy, and other brushstrokes, other contributions from other artists are visible, it does have that feeling you mentioned. It's just I don't know how else to describe it. It's just a really magical feeling when you see it all come together.
I guess just to add a little bit more from my perspective, I really always loved Ngoro Crater.
Yes.
like I don't know what it is. Like I know there's probably arguably better areas of the game. But like for some reason, like that path going down into it, like the transition from the landscape, like if I remember correctly, it goes from like kind of a dry area, and you go on down into this like really lush environment. There's like dinosaurs, and like it's just like it always stuck out in my mind. And I spent a lot of time there as a leather worker, as you can imagine.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
But back when I played, I just always really loved that area. Maybe it's just because the difference from the environment, it's so stark, but also just like the stuff in it, and there's like a lava area, and like just all of it is just very cool. It always was kind of like my favorite zone.
There's dinosaurs.
Yeah. I'm a nerd, what can I say?
No, it's such a it's cool
awesome
zone, man. It's like a little bubble, there's dinosaurs, there's the Karaji, the insects to the south, there's ancient relics, there's crystals, there's crazy creature. It's a really cool zone for sure. That's probably in my top 10 of favorites of all time.
And do you know the lore behind Ungoro, Break?
I do not. No.
It's one of the, or it's either the original or one of the original places that the Titans tested out life forms on Azeroth.
Oh, interesting.
And there are remnants of it in the zone. If you go into Lich King and Sholazar Basin, there's a similar feel to the zone because it's another area as well, and that is more expanded upon. So in that zone, you have actual Titan structures that you can. There's some in Ungoro as well, but there's like a lot of Titan structures in Sholazar that you can interact with, and you get a deeper understanding of what they were trying to do, and it evolves the story. Yeah, but we learn about that. I know I'm nerding out as I'm talking. But yeah, Ungoro is one of the like proving grounds, like the beta testing for the Titans on building life in Azeroth.
Cool. Did not know that.
So much lore in the game.
So much. Awesome.
I mean, and that's what makes these games that we love great, right? Like the lore, the story behind it. Like I feel like if you didn't have that stuff, even if you had like all the awesome visual and audio stuff, like without that lore, I feel like things still feel flat. So it's really, really cool to have the lore, the backstory, the understanding of why things are the way they are. I think that really matters. All right, so before we wrap up, let's end on something light and fun. We got really deep there. We'll just take it up a couple notches. Favorite World of Warcraft zone?
Probably Westfall for me. I love the aesthetic. It's like that idea of a rundown human settlement on the edge of the continent. It's such a cool vibe for me. Also, many fond memories of running dead mines.
Favorite Diablo 2 act setting? I think you already touched on this, so maybe it's just a repeat, but
if I want to steer clear of the favorite area that I talked about earlier in Haraga, I would say my second favorite, Act 1, I think, because you get hit with that very distinctive and iconic like gothic aesthetic. It just nails it for me. And that's all that stuff is the first thing you get to experience as a new player. And it stays with you.
Favorite Blizzard cinematic, any franchise?
Oh man, that's hard. Wrath of Lich King cinematic, I think.
Yes.
For me,
yes.
wins out. When you hear that, my son, the day you were born, the very forest whispered the name Arthas, and I'm just like, oh man, it's like right in the feels, you know. And then he gets to raise Sindragosa. It's too epic for me not to mention.
Daytime or nighttime lighting when designing environments?
Oh, good question. I would say nighttime for me, but I love sunset, you know, right when daytime is kind of like retreating and nighttime is creeping out. I think that's a really cool just time of day.
Coffee or tea while working?
Oh, coffee. Lots of coffee, specifically cold brew. I love it. It's my fuel. Please don't ask me how much I drink in a day.
If you could design a brand new fantasy environment from scratch with no constraints, what kind of place would it be?
Ooh, that's tough. I'm biased, but something hand painted, obviously, something stylized, vibrant colors, just something full of untethered magic, wild, chaotic magic, something with a hint of like a long lost civilization to give players like some history and lore to dig into potentially. I think that'd be rad.
Jordan, this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your story and perspective on art and world building. So with that, where can listeners find your work online?
First of all, I want to say thank you guys so much for having me. It has been an absolute joy to talk with you. And I really appreciate it. And if hearing me nerd out about prop art has piqued your interest, or you're a fan of player housing and want to see some more cool prop art, you can check out my stuff on ArtStation. It's jordtron5000 .artstation.com. That's my portfolio. And you can also check out my team's work there as well. You can just do a search for the hashtag World of Warcraft and check out everybody's cool art.
Before we close this one out, I would like to give a shout out to our community supporters. These are folks that are supporting our efforts across the podcast subreddit and Discord with a small monthly subscription via our new Stay a While and Listen Plus option. Community supporters enjoy some special perks, including early access to podcast episodes, occasional access to small pre-show hangouts with the hosts and podcast guests, supporter-only input opportunities, access to VIP-only areas of our Discord, and credited in the podcast post role as a community supporter, and more. If that sounds like something that interests you, the link is in the description below. So, the following folks are our founding community supporters: Apropos, Bones, Damage Corp, Extinct Dino, Jonks, Crassel, Planetary, Row, Trucker Ducky X95, Unique Sash, Vifron, and Zigga Pulp. Thank you so much for supporting the show. It really makes all the difference to us. We really appreciate you. Big thanks to Jordan for joining us today. Tyrael, Crude Sash, thank you as well. And to everyone listening, if you loved this episode and want to hear more, give us a follow, leave a rating, and share it with a fellow Diablo or WoW fan. Thank you so much for joining us today. Your presence honors us. And if you enjoy our content, please consider joining our community on Reddit and Discord. And as always, farewell until next time.